Great, thank you so much. I'm going to try and navigate both a mic and a clicker, so if you can't hear me, I might get too excited, so just tell me if you can't hear me. So thank you so much. I am just going to take an opportunity quickly to thank all our sponsors. Without all of you, today would not be possible, so thank you again very, very much. Right, so I will give you a quick overview of my background. I started off as a developer back in South Africa, and I worked at a few companies, and then I moved to Australia. So I was very fortunate enough to join Bankwest and worked on their first Agile team, and this was the original team back in 2009. At Bankwest, I had various roles. I was there for quite a few years, but then I decided to pack up my family and we moved to Melbourne. At Melbourne, I joined REA Group and I looked after the delivery of a couple of globally distributed teams. And it was absolutely amazing, but we missed, the sunny Perth. Sunny Perth and the beautiful beaches, so we came back to Perth. And probably for the last 5 years, that was my consulting career started. So I worked at many, many organizations. I've helped lots of teams with their ways of working. And that brings me to today. Schrodinger's paradox and metrics. Now, metrics, something I am very passionate about, and I'm very excited to share some of my experiences working with teams and watching their behaviors change over time based on the active observation. Now, I do have a couple of disclaimers to make. Firstly, and I actually reiterate it again, no animals were ever harmed during these experiments or during the making of my presentation. I did also enjoy all the funny cat videos. Next one, I actually only realized last night that my theme and the colors go hand in hand with this month's spooky season. So again, I had to dress the theme as well, so enjoy. And then thirdly, I am no quantum physicist, no expert in quantum physics. But what I can tell you is the story of Schrodinger's cat and how it relates to metrics. Right. Now, back in 1935, there was a physicist called Erwin Schrodinger. And he came up with this thought experiment where he wanted to illustrate the impact the observer have on quantum physics. So the experiment goes as is. You take a live cat, put it in a sealed box with a vial of poison, and that vial of poison may decay over time. And if it does, the poison will be released and the cat will die. But until you actually open the box, you wouldn't know if the cat is alive or dead. So this cat is in this superposition where it's in two states. But until you actually open the box, that's when these two states will collapse and you'll have a live or a dead kitty. Now, the experiment also illustrated the impact the observer have. So indirectly, you just watching or looking will have an impact on the outcome. So you might be killing the cat. What is the observer effect? Now, best way to explain it, raise your hand if you've ever watched the show Undercover Boss. Yay, there's a few. This is an absolutely amazing show. So it's this hidden camera show, for those who don't know, where you've got this top level exec, goes in undercover, and starts as a low-level employee just to watch and see what's going on in his or her organization. And it's absolutely mind-blowing what they find. If that top-level exec had to go in as themselves and watch the teams and observe the teams, they would have got a different result. Because people change their behavior based on the act of observation. So that brings me to metrics? Raise your hand if you use metrics and love metrics. I'm hoping everyone, yeah, you came to the right talk. Awesome. So look, metrics can be used for so many great things. And if used correctly, it can help you make great data-driven decisions. But what I find over the last few years, that unfortunately, there is no one-size-fits-all metrics. There is no one metric that will tell you everything. Also, sometimes you could have the best intentions with what you're tracking, but just the act of observation will influence the outcomes. So, let me give you a few examples. Velocity. Raise your hand if you use velocity or are forced to use velocity. Okay, I've got a few. All right, so those probably, you've come across some of the, dangers of using velocity. And for those who don't know, velocity, simply put, is an internal metric team. An internal metric. And the teams normally use it for planning so that they can see how much they can do. Now, the dangers are when it is used as an organizational metric. Because then, again, it's like comparing these two different teams or multiple teams. Now, I worked at an organization before, and unfortunately, they used velocity as an organizational metric. And during their weekly SOS, so stand-up or stand-ups, they had all the product owners attend these sessions, and it went like this. So, product owner. My team has delivered 25 points. We are on track for this sprint. Next product owner. My team has delivered 35 points. We're good. Next product owner. We're a little bit behind. We've delivered 17 points so far, but we don't need help. We're good. We'll make it. It actually happened, okay? It's a real life story. So then that product owner went back to their teams and said, we need to up our velocity, we're behind. So team huddle, team developers, great, you know what? Let's give some extra points to those bug cards. Product owner, actually, you know what? Don't worry about this important thing. Let's just try and get these quick fixes. Quick things are over the line because we need to up our velocity. Anyone see the dangers in that? All right. Now this also reminds me of the Cobra effect. Has anyone heard of the Cobra effect before? Beautiful, I've got 1, 2, okay, a few. All right, so many, many years ago when the British, they were still ruling India, and they came up with this problem where the cobras, it was just, the population was getting too big, and so many deaths due to cobras. So they decided to put in a bounty for any dead cobra brought to them. Okay, well, it went well, initially, but then people realized, ooh, this is a business opportunity. We can make money. So they started breeding cobras. So more and more dead cobras flew in, and the British government couldn't work out what the hell is going on. And then after a while, they realized, So they stopped the bounty. People realized, okay, well, we don't have any more use for these cobras, so they released them back in the wild, and guess what? Population went up. All right. So this just shows that if you are focusing on the wrong things, and sometimes with the best intentions, that people respond to incentives, can use them to manipulate, to their advantage. And that's probably not what you want, the outcome that you want. So where I've seen it before, now I am going to ask you, raise your hand, and I know it happens because I've worked at many organizations and I've seen this happening, but raise your hand if you're brave enough. If you've seen any of these or experienced some of these, we can make our velocity very fast. Let's just remove code reviews completely. Oh, I got some. Okay, beautiful. Next one. Our definition of done doesn't include testing. Oh, I'm dying inside, okay? Next one. This team has a high velocity. They should definitely work on the more critical items. Oh, I could see the hands. Okay, look. Problem is, this is what it is. The rules are made up. The points does not matter. Surprise, surprise. So you can beat the system, and I've seen many, many teams beating the system. So it just shows with the Campbell's law, beautiful. The more important the metric, the more likely it will be manipulated. All right, next one is probably a little bit controversial, but I'll explain. So who use burn-up charts, burn-down charts? Okay, a lot of you. I love them. It's really, really good. Now, it's just a visual representation, to look at what we've achieved, how we're going, and likely, how are we tracking in future. But it can be misused. Where I've seen where, remember when you need to give an update on how the team's delivery is performing, you do a nice screenshot and you just send it to, here we go, there we go. No context, nothing. So what are they going to use with that? Leaders are going to say, you're going to have it all done by the 22nd of November. Done. Committed. Okay, so where it's misused is that lack of context, communication. Hey, there's a lot of assumptions. And that is probably why I personally like to use it more as a reflective tool to look at historically what is going on, what's preventing the team, is there anything what is happening? Because the data, historical data, is probably more valuable than use it as a predictive tool. But you can use it, right? It's just making sure that you've got the full picture. Now, I've worked at an organization or a team, and we were experimenting with, our sprints, cadence. So we decided we're going to go with 1 week sprints. I wouldn't recommend it. It's fast, okay? It's literally a sprint. But hey, we wanted to see, and the metric that we used was burn-down charts, and we were full on. It was in our face all the time. So I think lots of you can also resonate with this. Day 1, nothing. Day 2, nothing. Day 3, nothing. And then you get worried. Day 4, nothing. And it's just this flat deadline, and everyone is wondering, are you guys actually working? I promise you, we are. But then all of a sudden, on Thursday, things just became chaotic because tomorrow we've got a sprint review, we've got a retro, and everything, it needs to be done, and we need to show the progress, and we're going to show this beautiful chart to our leaders, our sponsors, and at the moment, it looks like we haven't done anything. So what happens? It's chaos. Everyone jumps in and, you know what? It's fine. Let's just claim that one. It's nearly done. It's cool. Let's just push it in. Has anyone all done that? Yeah, let's just push it in. We'll just claim the points, right? Because we've done most of it. It's just 2 weeks left of work to do. But anyway, we can claim those things. And then all of a sudden, you've got this cliffhanger, It's a parachute jump, that beautiful. We've delivered everything. In reality, on Monday morning, we still have lots of other things to do, and that's probably why you've got the deadline, the flat line. So data is an important piece of the puzzle, but it is useless without context, and again, make sure that you know the focus of your metric, because it might lead to a different result. So, next one, team happiness. Raise your hand if you ever had to answer that question. Are you happy in your team, right? We've all had. Now, 81% fake happiness at work. I wasn't going to ask that question because I assume you're sitting with all your employees here. All right, so guess what? That metric is probably asterisk, not going to be accurate. Now, I worked in a team, and I'll give you a bit of background. So it's this team was just not performing. They weren't delivering anything or very little. Their backlog was just looked horrendous. The Scrum Master was a little bit of a bully. Most people were working remotely, so cameras were off. They just weren't engaged. So really a problem team. But after every sprint, 2 weeks, so they would have a retro, and the Scrum Master would ask, how happy are you? And guess what? The team said they are happy. I was very confused. Okay, so I had some, one-on-ones with people, and they would tell me the problems, and they weren't happy, and then I got a little bit more context. And then guess what? For the next 6 to 8 weeks, that team was beautifully happy. So no problem, right? Yet, but they were underperforming, they weren't happy, the Scrum Master was a bully. What do you think was wrong? Yes. Okay, so I'll quickly explain. Probably the biggest problem with them was they were sitting with someone that they didn't feel psychologically safe. The trust wasn't there. But then also that cognitive bias. Hey, I would much rather, I don't want to stir the pot. I don't want to make any waves. We're happy. We're good. I don't want to make any dramas. I'm always going to be good. Okay. And then also having that clear communication of the purpose. And timing and frequency is very important. If someone asks me every single day, am I happy? I'm just going to tell them to bugger off. All right, so next important thing, reflect on what happiness actually means. What do you mean? Because maybe I'm happy at work, but I'm not happy at home. Or, vice versa. You want to narrow that down a little bit. Just what do you want to do with that? If I'm not happy, what are you going to do with that? All right. Now, the next metrics are probably, they won't kill the cat, okay? And I haven't seen too much, of that impact, of that observer effect, but they still, it's great metrics, and there's some things that you might want to look at. So it's metrics to use to determine flow and engineering performance. All right, cycle time, lead time, pretty standard. Who uses those? Oh, there's a few. Okay, beautiful. All right, so simply put, how I can explain it, if work comes in, from that, the ticket is created. This is when work comes in until when the customer actually gets it, so it's delivered. That is seen as lead time. Cycle time is, how work comes in and sometimes it's sitting there because no one has time to work on it. But then eventually, when the team actually start picking it up until when they deliver it, that is cycle time. So cycle time, you want to look at a low number, and lead time, you probably want to, churn through a lot of work, which is, but you are looking for that stable metric. So what does stable cycle time means? The team is working at a good, sustainable pace, and without too many disruptions. I've worked with a great, very high-performing team, and their cycle time was about 2 to 3, so from when they get it until when it's released to production. Volatile cycle time, team with challenges. And then again, this metric, is not going to give you everything, but it's going to tell you there's some problems, so you want to dive a little bit further. But also, careful consideration. If it's too much of a focus on, we need to have this number low, otherwise there's going to be consequences. Because people are then going to start dropping things. The quality is going to go. What a lead time tells you, so stable lead time, you've got a well-oiled machine, the factory is working, it's great, the work comes in at a good space, and work gets churned through. But when you've got that volatile lead time, with a stable cycle time, work is arriving like, those, how could I say, if you've got those tomato sauce bottles and you're trying to get those tomato sauce out and all of a sudden everything comes, that's probably what it is. So, sometimes you've got these teams that's sitting with way too much work, and sometimes you've got teams they've got barely anything to do. So you know that your lead time, there's something wrong with that factory. Dorometrics, who uses those? Okay, now these are very popular to use, popular in lots of people use them from an organizational snapshot. How are our teams performing? The problem is not all teams, I wouldn't say all teams can use these. Reason is, that first one, deployment frequency. So you've got a web application team, web team, they can deploy as fast as they can, nothing, okay, except for internal stuff maybe, but nothing should stop them. Now you sit with mobile teams. Mobile teams need to go through the App Store, they need to go through, so unfortunately there's things out of their control they cannot do. So now, if you look at comparing your teams and say, okay, some of these teams are amazing, the elite performers, but your poor mobile teams are never going to get there. Okay, so these things, you can probably Google release them, how the industry standard is going every year, and then people can track them and see how's our teams going. But as I said, it's not going to work for all the teams. Developer experience. Now this is a really cool, it's becoming more and more popular, and thank you for joining my talk, I am going to say. So Dave Miko, maybe after, don't leave. Dave Miko is talking about developer experience, so maybe after this you can go and live stream his or listen to his playback. He'll talk about developer experience. Developer experience is really, teams want to deliver work. They are happy when they can ship things. These metrics will look at what is standing in their way of delivering things. Because then, this is the purpose, this is why they exist, is to ship things. So why wouldn't we want to make things easier for them? So they look at three things. One is that feedback loops, and I'll explain a little bit more. So they look at feedback loops, flow state, and cognitive load. So it really is, looking at all components from that developer ecosystem. And how is it contributing to that developer productivity, satisfaction, and just how are they going? Are we making things easier, or are we making it harder for them? So when you look at feedback loops, how quickly can they release things and get that feedback loop? So, if you've got lots of hoops to jump over to, change requests, I'm sure developers over here would have lots of experience with, have to jump through so many hoops just to release things to production. You've got all these multiple change requests that you need to do. Well, how can we simplify that? Flow state. Now, if you've got something really important to do, but you've got a meeting, and then all of a sudden someone asks you something, and then you've got another meeting, and then, okay, cool, now I've got some time and I'm getting into it, and then, oops, even worse, now with Teams and Slack and, all our remote tools, people just constantly, you can never get into that flow state. And that is so important for the team. So how can we help them to get into that flow state? Last one is the cognitive load. So you've got lots of platform enabling teams that help normally with these, where it's what can we do? What processes can we automate? How can we make things easier? Is it, documenting things? Just to take that cognitive load away. They don't need to think about the simple things. They can focus on their work. But we'll take care of all the other things. So a quick snapshot of areas of friction. And this is probably all the things that you want to try and focus on when you look at that developer experience. If you want to look, so I've got lots of references, so ping me afterwards if you want to get a little bit more information. So next one, my favorites. Customer metrics to guide your decision making. Now there are so many metrics out there, so I've tried to, pick all my favorites. First one, North Star metric. Does anyone use those? Okay, this is actually really cool. I like it. When you are looking at your company want to grow, what is that one growth metric that is, going to give the teams focus? It's not the only metric, don't get me wrong, but it's just going to help us to see that is our North Star, and it's not revenue, okay? So, for example, you've got Facebook, I've got the bad North Star metrics, and then you've got the actual North Star metrics. So, actual North Star metric for Facebook, for example, daily active users. For Spotify, not the number of subscriptions, it's time spent, listening to music. YouTube, number of YouTube videos, not number of videos uploaded, but actually looking at, from a customer perspective, your time spent watching those videos. So your North Star metric, again, should never be a revenue metric. The revenue is a price the customer pays for your service or your product. So the North Star metric is that value that that customer gets in return for that price that they are paying. Next one, how happy are our customers? Now, customer satisfaction score is an interesting one, especially working with great product teams. But what I find is it's funny how companies look and they put, have you ever seen, you're trying to buy something, and then once you've purchased something, then all of a sudden this pop-up comes, how satisfied are you? And then, okay, I'm sorry, I never fill in those surveys, but it's it's the happy path. Okay, well, that metric is there for a reason, because they try and target the happy paths so that they can say, our customer satisfaction score is really high. How funny is that? I know, working with very clever product managers. But again, it's just one small metric that is not, it's just targeting the happy path. It's not actually looking at any other metrics. How many things, how many complaints are coming in, or what is a customer effort score? I actually like that one, because how much effort does it take for a customer to get to something or to get help? Your customer loyalty index, how loyal are our customers? So metrics is a bit complex. What I also love is, I've worked with an organization before, and with mobile teams, after a big feature was released, we waited a bit and we got the whole team involved. So we got a number of teams involved, and we all went through the customer metrics. We looked at the Apple Store and the Google Play and looked at, what does the customer say? Because these things get, as a team, sometimes we forget about. The customer actually tells you in black and white, what are they thinking? But most of the times we ignore what they say, which is really sad. These customers are amazing. They will tell you what they like, what they don't like, and don't be scared of responding. So we actually, I was very shocked because I was like, what? I can respond to a customer? What? Yes, we got some guidance on what to say, but that's where you build that relationship with your customer. Now, are we on the right track? Usage metrics. Now, are they using the stuff that we think is important to them? And again, all these metrics, for those who's working in teams, I actually want to quickly see. Raise your hand if you ever see these product type metrics. Okay, there's a few. There's a lot of teams that never actually get these metrics. So product people, they see it, they live it, they breathe it, but it doesn't actually flow down. How awesome would it be is I've worked on a feature for the last month, it was so important, and I can actually see if they're actually using it or not. Feature adoption rate, again, how many people are actually adopting this feature? Customer retention rate, how many customers, stay with us and like using our product. Customer churn rate, how many customers are leaving because they don't like our products anymore. That was a lot of metrics. And I'm going to leave you all with a final thought. In a world of metrics and measurement, we are not just observers. We are active participants shaping the very outcomes we seek to understand. So let's embrace the power of awareness. For in the dance between the observer and the observed lies the key to unlocking a clearer, more meaningful understanding of our data-driven universe. Thank you. Any questions? We've got some time for questions.
Hi, thank you for that. It was good. And I'm glad to know as well you worked as a delivery lead, and I work as an engineering manager, and constantly it's always metrics in terms of how can I use metrics, not to judge, but as to how can I understand more about the team and what areas I should focus as a leader. I have too many questions, so I might catch up with you after as well, but I'll ask one for now.
Yes.
You mentioned in between, DORA metrics is not for all the teams. So I just wanted to understand a little bit more what you meant by that.
So if you say, and then especially if from an organizational point of view, you're looking at our DORA metrics, and the example that I use, you've got web application teams. So I've worked with teams, as again, they can go really fast. Nothing is standing in the way. So they can literally release to production daily, multiple times a day. Where you've got mobile teams, they can't do it because Apple Store tells them that we can only do at certain times. So whether it's weekly, monthly, I don't actually know what's the latest one. But so now you're comparing your teams, mobile team versus your web application team. And you say, oh, this team is actually better than your mobile team, which is not the case. So that is probably the only reason why I would say DORA metrics, it's hard to use it for all your teams because with some teams, you cannot do it. There are also sometimes, you've got, I've worked at a bank before, is some systems are, depending on where you are, sometimes it's just too complex, it's too risky to push things to production on, a daily basis, multiple times a day. So you probably want to do it when customers are not using your core system. So sometimes you get the, depending on also what's a change, is you can do it after hours. But you also don't want to do that often. The other one is, for example, you get teams, depending on the industry that you are. If you are in sports bet, working for sports bet, for example, there is no freaking way anyone is going to release anything to production just before Melbourne Cup. So it's going to influence your metrics. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Just a quick follow-up. Do you make a distinction between
So the question was, do I make a distinction between continuous release and continuous deployment? Good question. I think it depends. But catch up with me afterwards. Keen to explore more of your questions. So thank you. There's another question.
Yeah, thank you first for the chat. I think we've all been in situations where we've seen metrics used well and metrics used not so well, and just that conscious opinion that if you track something, it's going to have an impact, and it may not be the impact that you're anticipating. The consumer and customer metrics are really interesting to me, and I noted that there's a big one that's been used by multiple organizations I've worked for that was missing, and that was Net Promoter Score, or NPS. I'm interested in whether you have a take on that and the usefulness of it or lack thereof, or...
I'm gonna, John, I don't know if you want to answer that one. I'm seeing John from Keystart. John, did you want to answer do you guys use NPS? Okay, beautiful. What do you use it for? Sorry, I'm just gonna get you a mic quickly. And I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, John.
That's okay. I do feel like I'm being put on the spot. Yeah, we do use it to understand our customers, get feedback from our customers. I guess we've had some instances recently where there's things, I suppose, out of our control to a degree. In particular, recent interest rate rises has had a direct impact on our NPS.
Yeah. So yes, I just didn't put it in there. Yes. Companies that I work for, the company that I'm working for now, they use that as a metric. Everything, there's, as long as you don't just use it as one single metric, this is telling you exactly everything that we need to know about our customers, because that is going to be the danger. There's nothing wrong with using NPS. I just don't feel like it's a very complete metric, and that's my personal opinion. And prove me wrong. Catch up with me afterwards. But that's something that I found is just thank you for the question. Good question.
We'll call this a hypothetical situation. Let's say I've got an individual who was put on performance management, and the business might be wanting to know with some sort of certainty, but basically the business might be wanting to mitigate the chance of an unfair dismissal claim at some point in the future, and so they want metrics and data and things that are sort of backable. Have you got any thoughts on good and bad metrics on an individual developer level?
Don't do it. I would never, ever, ever use a metric on an individual level. That to me is the most dangerous situation, and that's not helping the person, okay? So, and again, lots of these things are my personal opinion, my experience, is if someone is on a performance plan, you want to see what you can do to help them. You don't want to go to scrutinize and say, you made a mistake, and the data is work with that person, give them something to do and follow up. That is a much better conversation than using a metric and saying, yes, I've seen and I've almost died inside when people use individual velocity, saying, your developers, each person get a velocity. Yes, I've seen that. I've seen it all. You're going to do this many points for the next 2 weeks. Just don't ever do it. I think it's much better to help that person, sit with them, look at what is going to help them. Yes, and be clear on your expectations and follow up. I've got one more question.
Hey. So trying to do metrics well is something I want to work on and improve on, and I often am tech leading teams and helping them put together their sprints and so on. And I want to come up with strategies to help plan the effort that's required to get these good metrics into the products? Obviously, it takes effort to make sure we're tracking this sort of stuff. Can you tell us things that have worked for you for planning the effort that's required? Do you make it part of the definition of done? You know, building this feature, can we track it? Or is it its own item in the backlog? What do you think?
I think you just answered it. 100% it should be part of your definition of done. Is how do we even know that the customers are going to use it? If we can't measure it, we can't track it, well, you know, some people would say, does it even exist? But you want to make sure that it is going well, and even from a back-end perspective is, you know, all your metrics, is your systems working the way they should be working? If you don't build that in, then you are going to be very reactive, you know, with, oh crap, all these things have fallen down and we didn't know about it. Is you want to make sure that you plan and build it in. It's a good question. Any more questions? Yes. Oh.
Thank you. The situation of presenting kind of velocity points in a meeting of POs kind of resonated with me. And I think my opinion is that it's rarely useful to present velocity to a large number of people. One of the things I've been wanting to implement is estimating value and kind of predicting the amount of value instead. Do you have any thoughts on implementing kind of a value points system or using value delivered as a metric that could be kind of standardized?
It's a good question. Yes, and again, that was the dangers of using velocity outside of the team, because velocity is really an internal team where points just are made up. You can use anything. I think it just depends on what are you trying to track. If you are just tracking, you know, oh, this team is doing 5 value points, or, you know, whatever it is, well, the team is just doing what the product owner tells them what to do. So the responsibility for, if you're working with a product owner or product manager, the responsibility of the product owner is to ensure that the team is doing, you know, valuable stuff. What you might want to look at in from an organizational level is there anything that's holding back the team? So based on past performances, and what can we do to help support them? And so that's why I probably referenced developer experience, is because people are going to ship stuff. So if everything comes together, you know, your product owner makes sure that they're working on the right valuable stuff, is what is standing in the developer, and when I say developer, it's testers, everyone in the team, right? What's standing in their way from delivering these amazing things? And what can we do to help them? So that to me would be a greater conversation having with leaders, and how can they support us than saying, this team is just crap. Yeah.
We have time for one last question.
So this kind of ties in with a few points that you've touched on and some of the other questions, but something that's been on my mind for a while is, well, the Cobra effect that you brought up. I'm glad you touched on that. But the difference between the metric itself and the meaning you're trying to get from the metric, like the customer satisfaction scores and all that, how likely are you to recommend our product to friends and it's Western Power? What? What alternative do I have? But more broadly, like, our velocity is very high, so this team gets rewarded. I think that the metric should be informing a conversation rather than basing 100%. The decision, but also that the metric isn't what you're measuring. The customer satisfaction response is not how happy your users are. Do you have any kind of insights or advice for how to choose metrics that cut into what you're actually trying to measure, and how to interpret the results to avoid this Cobra effect? This might be a lot.
It's a lot. It's a great question, and I'm going to sound like such a consultant and say it depends. It depends on your product. It depends on what you want to track. It depends on your problem areas. And again, there is unfortunately no golden, this is, the ultimate metric that you need. It just depends. So, but make sure that you know that the dangers of thinking, what can go wrong? What can influence the outcome of this metric? Because as soon as you start measuring it, you are directly or indirectly influencing the outcome of that metric. And I know that's probably not what you want to hear. I'm sorry. But yeah, catch up with me afterwards. So thank you.